Have you ever looked at coax and wondered what all the letters and numbers mean? You ever wonder why amateur radio systems commonly use 50 ohm coax? Can I bury coax? We're going to answer all those questions and more and prepare you for Winter Field Day 2026. Hello and welcome to the Ham Radio Guide Podcast. My name is Marvin and my call sign is W0MAT. Welcome to episode number 74. We're talking about one of the most important elements of the hobby today, and that's going to be coax. It's going to take up a good portion of the show. We're not going to get into too much other stuff like news or Ham Radio Guide jokes this week. We just have a lot of topics to cover. So I want to make sure that we are getting into that. We're going to talk about the history of it, the information behind it, why I use the coax I do, and why I find that so important. So I do want to get into one thing real quick, a couple different things. One is talking about Hamvention, a quick summary on that, and had a really great time. It was a good convention per se. Didn't get to any forums, unfortunately. I'm going to try and go back and watch some of them on the DARA Dayton Amateur Radio Ham Radio, their YouTube channel, and got to meet with a lot of great vendors. Got some videos coming out. I hope you get to go out and actually see my YouTube video on you might be an amateur radio operator if. I'm kind of hoping that's doing really well. I haven't really checked to see in the last 24 hours how it's doing overall. I'm going to just try and log in real quick here so I can go get the quick highlight for it. But that was a kind of a fun little video to do, and I really enjoyed doing that one. And let's see what that video quickly looks at. We're still dead on views, so definitely hope you'll go out and check that one out. You might be an amateur radio operator if. And so that was pretty good. Got a lot of the videos coming out. One I did with the World Radio League Command Center. That's a really cool, neat feature. It's only on the online version, but if you haven't checked that out yet, please go out and do. And if you want to try World Radio League, it's a free subscription. But if you do want to, or it's a free account you can create. But if you want to do a subscription, go out and use the code Ham Radio Guy. Save yourself 10%. And, sign up for one of their monthly subscriptions or a yearly subscription, however you want to go about doing it. But Ham Radio Prep and World Radio League, you can save yourself money there. Helps out the show. And because I just took on some cost. Here's my second note now, besides Hamvention there. I talked a little bit about this on the Ham Shack TV tonight of kind of my Hamvention summary. I did pick up a little here. It's still in my other bag from Modern Morse. And I did, get a rig runner from West Mountain Radio. It's the version I can turn on and off remotely. So I don't know if I'll get that in 6 weeks or 6 months, but that's going to be a little while before that one comes in, I'm guessing. But it was, again, nothing too major. I picked up an RT Systems cable, some Hamvention shirts. Nothing too exciting overall, but it was a good show. Really enjoyed it and had a great time. And so I would definitely be ready to go back next year. I've been looking for hotels, and it looks like there's a lot of hotels already booked up and sold out. So I don't know if that's just because it's a year in advance and they won't go that far out, or if it's something else going on. So I'm a little fear of what that brings. That hotels are already booked up and sold out for next year. So maybe that many people are excited about it. I don't know, but definitely will keep my eyes open on the hotels for that. And so the other part I was going to get into is that I've kind of had an increased cost in the podcast here. We are going to a video version of podcasts each and every episode now as much as possible. If I'm not at the Shack studio here, like you see with my little background on this episode, you'll have to go out to the YouTube channel to visit that. This will be uploaded as audio as well to Podbean and do the audio version there. But to get the audio video version going, I had to upgrade my Podbean account and make some changes to Apple Podcasts to be able to make that happen. And so I've increased some costs there. I want to say my cost didn't quite double, but it went up significantly, almost double. So, appreciation of the show, keeping that supported. This does come out of my pocket completely, and I appreciate the patrons that have stuck with me and continue to support that to help cover some of this cost. I think you're appreciating it. I mean, we've got people listening in 46 countries. I looked today, I have got like 5 stars on Podbean and Apple Podcasts. I got 5 stars for these episodes. I'm still ranking in the top 30 of podcasts for amateur radio. So I think I'm doing things right. Could I do more social media and maybe more videos? Yeah, potentially I could, but I have a life and balance I have to be able to make work as well with work and full time and things like that. So, and obviously farm projects. I'll be doing a lot of them this weekend. So that's why I'm recording this actually late on Friday night of Memorial Day weekend here. It's like midnight. So anyway, it's been a long day. Been up since 4 a.m. But I probably look like I'm tired too. My eyes are probably a little red, but that's also allergies affecting me. So a little sniffles here or there. Just I'm just trying to get past the allergy season. So, like I said, we have a packed show talking to you about coax this week. So I'm going to skip all the other mumbo jumbo of things. Just that we are celebrating 5 years of the podcast this year. What started as kind of a fun, occasional hobby thing during COVID has grown into a consistent, bi-weekly podcast. I'm trying to get them out a little bit more often for you. I will be probably, if I can get them recorded ahead of time, I'll be gone for a week or two on a trip and doing some POTA stuff up in Alaska. So, with more listeners, subscribers, and patrons now than I've ever imagined, I couldn't have done it without all of you. So I greatly appreciate it. And we just surpassed over 28,000 downloads on Podbean. So super excited about that as well. So that is what I've got for all my, for information here before we actually get into the topic. So, like I said, before we jump into preparing your station for field day and taking a quick look at your coax, I want to go back and look at the history of something every amateur radio operator depends on, and that's coax cable. Believe it or not, coax cable has roots going all the way back to the 1800s. During the early days of transatlantic cable communications, those first telegraph cables were used as a center conductor surrounded by a rubber insulating material. And interestingly enough, there wasn't even an outer shield like we think of today. The seawater itself helped complete that circuit. So, the modern coax cable we use today was developed in 1916 by Lloyd Eppenscheid and Herman Affel at Bell Telephone Laboratories. And by the 1930s, coax was being used to connect the radio network's television system, long-distance telephone infrastructure across the country. Then came World War II. Military demanded dramatic increased coax production, and advances in polyethylene insulation helped create flexible, affordable coax cable that could be rapidly deployed in the field. After the war, surplus coax became widely available and quickly gained popularity among amateur radio operators. For many hams, it became the easier and more practical alternative to open wire feedline systems. So here we are nearly half a century later, and we're still depending on, probably a century later, actually, it should say, we're still depending on coax every time we key up a mic, a radio of any sort, 2 meters, 440 HF, whatever it is. So the other thing is I asked you some questions at the very beginning, is like, you ever looked at coax and you go, well, I've got RG17 or M17, it's an LMR 400, what does all this mean? I don't know what size I need. It's an RG8X or RG8, RG213. I mean, there's just all kinds of them across the board. Like I said, I was late, so if I yawned during the show, I apologize. I did not do any caffeine this evening. So what does RG mean? Well, RG originally stood for Radio Guide. It came from an old military specifications, and that number really followed an essential reference number from the military guidebook. Over RG would be, it was kind of like a reference page, and so over time, RG number simply became the common description for coax cable throughout the radio industry. And that's we still refer to it as still today. Now, M17 is a little different. You probably won't see that commonly within your realm unless you're in the military. And this is really the modern military specification standard established by the U.S. Department of Defense. This specification ensures the coax meets the strict durability and performance that is required for the military environments. And then the final one that I use a lot and I refer to nowadays, and I prefer as my popular use, a lot of LMR 400, and that's the land mobile radio, which points back to its intended use in commercial and public safety systems. Example, the LMR 400, which I just referred to, is a cable with approximately an outside diameter of 0.405 inches. So that's the size of that, and that's where that comes from. So different manufacturers may vary slightly on that number, but with shielding and insulation jackets, materials, things like that. But overall, the cable category remains pretty much the same. And but there's a lot of different types of cables too, which we'll kind of get into in just a second. We've got some with polyethylene and other things inside there. But I want to get to two more things first. Well, I guess it's mainly one, but velocity factor. You hear about that quite a bit. And, what does that really mean? And that's really how fast an RF signal can travel through a speed compared to light in a vacuum. And that's where that comes from. So, this becomes important if you're doing any type of antenna phasing or matching selections, transmission line calculations, things like that. And you want to know what the velocity of that cable is, how fast it's traveling as a signal through that coax. And so that's an important thing too. Again, generally speaking, different types of material inside the cable, like I mentioned a second ago, a polyethylene or something can affect the velocity factor, and some of these signal characteristics or signal loss characteristics, maybe even so. So you want to make sure you buy good quality cable when you're buying it, and ask what some of those elements are of the cable that you're looking for. Two other things was can you bury coax? There is certain cables that you need. You can bury cable. You can certainly bury coax, but the cable needs to be specified specifically for that. And it needs to be rated for direct burial. So you can get coax that is not rated for it. And the reason you want direct buried coax, if I get that right this late, to handle moisture, soil exposure, long-term underground insulation, and hopefully no rodents or anything are get in there and chew it. It's got a fairly durable outside coating, and it's really to help prevent a lot of deterioration when exposed to moisture and any type of ground conditions. And so you want it's got usually a little bit thicker outer coating material to the versus a standard coax. So you always want to make sure you check the jacket. If you want to bury a coax, make sure you check it. It says direct burial, is what it's supposed to be made for. And that's what you're going to want to do. So there's that. And so, yes, you can't bury coax, but it's got to be specifically rated for that. And so the other thing was, and I have to look at my notes a little bit more on this one. And you ever really wonder why amateur radios use 50 ohm coax? And where does that come from? Why is it 50 ohms? You always hear about 75 ohms, and can 75 ohms be used? And sometimes it can be in some places. You may be better off with that, depending on what your circumstances or situation is, what you're wanting to do. But back in 1929, engineers at Bell Laboratories again determined that the different impedances had different advantages. 77 ohms offered the lowest attenuation, which is what we more familiarize ourselves with as 75 ohm today. 30 ohms handled the highest amount of power, and 60 ohms handled high voltage efficiently. So eventually the 50 ohms became the compromise between power handling and signal loss, and it worked very well with impedance characteristics of common dipole antennas. So after decades later, 50 ohms remains the standard throughout the amateur radio hobby, as our coax of choice. So now that I've covered a little bit of coax history, some of the fundamentals, let's talk about why your feedline could make or break your field day here in 2026. And I want to make sure you have as much as a successful field day as you can. I think that's important, and it's one of those things that um, it is I'll call it one of the very probably elements of your backbone of your field day setup. If you're not, if you don't have good coax, good coax connectors, you could fight your system all day long. And yes, the antenna is probably, my apologies. Like I said, this is late podcast for me recording, different than normal. So I'm trying to get this one out for the Memorial Day weekend, so you have a chance to listen to it. And so, um, anyway, it's late, and I know it. Not usually my cup of tea to stay up this late in the in the podcast. But let's get back. I don't want to squirrel on that too much. So, um, but it's one of those things that coax can really make or break your day. It could become part of your, frustration and just trying to figure out why something's not working. I mean, it could just be a simple loose connection in your coax and in your connector somewhere that can make all the difference for RF or your signal loss and your attenuation of your cable and all those sort of things. So you know that's why it's so important to make sure you have good coax. So I'm going to take a little bit of different spin on that and go away from coax for just a second here. But when people think of field day, it's very different for different people. Some people may operate at a public park, which I'm sure many people will be going out and operating, POTA park. Some people operate from an EOC. They'll head into the woods. They'll be doing portable activations there. Some people are going to join at a park, their local club, and they're going to have a massive multi-operator setup for field day. And so again, field day means a lot of different things to different people. And some will even consider a contest. Some's going to look at it as a communications training. Some people will think of it as a kind of an antenna experiment to go out and test new antennas or set a new antenna up. And maybe we, from our approach in winter field day with doing field day for winter time, is really your excuse to test the solar power, your batteries, your generators, your portable setups. And so that's that's my take on it. That's what I like being able to do, is go out and test my stuff, make sure it's still working. And quite frankly, for many of us, it's a weekend filled with radios, friends, grilling burgers, late night pileups, making memories, having a good time, camping out, doing whatever you do, grilling, having potluck of food, plethora of food and coming. Winter field day, love doing like chili cook-offs with it. So, just a lot of different things. And, I think that's part of the beauty of field day, is that you kind of get all those things at once. And it's such a rush. And my wife knows that my field day is like, it's like my second wedding day. It's the next important thing to me during the year is for winter field day or summer field day, either one. That is my day. That's what I like to do. So no matter how you approach winter field day, or I'm sorry, boy, I'm getting to that. No matter how you approach field day, there's one thing every successful setup depends on, and that's just that reliable station infrastructure, which I was talking about just a second ago. And one of the most powerful parts of any station is the coax cable itself. And coax, it really matters more than you think it does. You don't think of it being such a big deal. I've got some, I'm going to throw it together. I'm going to put a couple quick connectors on. But I think a lot of operators obsess over, having the latest transceiver, their antennas, putting up, trailers and masts. But if your feed line is compromised, you're losing performance before your signal even leaves the antenna. I mean, your whole setup is just gone. Um, you know, your coax really takes a beating. It gets stepped on, it gets rolled up, it's exposed to moisture. It could be damaged internally. It's been coiled up and wrapped around, or maybe it got kinked at one point. It really takes a beating over time. So maybe this is you've had the same coax for the last 5, 10 years, whatever. Um, and so maybe this is a new year to get some coax for you, but uh, you know you might think that coax is fine and you had no problems with it and it's working, but sometimes the losses are just subtle, and other times they could be massive. So if it's one of those things you haven't replaced your coax, it's probably a good time to do so. And I know I've got some coax I've had for quite a while. I'll continue to use it this year, but I know some of it's 5, 6, 7 years old, but I do expect to get at least a 10-year life expectancy out of it. So, you know, um, during a busy field day weekend, and having a weak signal can mean the difference between making the contact or missing it entirely. And there's nothing worse than, knowing that you maybe could have fixed or resolved that issue potentially. And if you're running a portable, temporary, or emergency style operation, um, that coax becomes something you and your entire station depends on and being reliable. Again, what I said a minute ago is a field day is supposed to test your emergency readiness. And if your coax fails, then what? You know, if this was an actual emergency deployment, what are you going to do? And of course, you can always say, hey, buddy, do you have an extra 50-foot round of coax? Is there other coax around here I could use? Maybe you have a second roll yourself you could roll out and check. But, you know, why lose that time if you can, have good coax from the very beginning? Now, you can go buy Cable Experts, you can buy ABR Industries, you can get coax from DX Engineering, you can get it from, Amazon, you can get it from Wireman, and Massey and Poloni. I mean, you name it. You go get your coax wherever you want it. I don't care. Um, but we have all probably bought inexpensive coax at some point. And I know I did from Amazon one day when I was just needing some for kind of a quick emergency. I needed some for like within a day or two, and I know ABR could not get it to me that quick. It wasn't going to happen. And yes, that coax may work, but you know, again, how well is it going to perform, and is it going to perform efficiently? Is one of those things that you need to know. And this is one of those things where I would probably be testing that coax ahead of time, making sure it has good grounding, and that all the connections are good on it, and looking at the quality of it. Higher quality coax means you have lower signal loss, better shielding, improved durability, better weather resistance, increased reliability, more successful QSOs, and hopefully better receive performance in any noisy RF environments. And if you have all that, and that passes the um, we call it the smell test, per se, lack of better words at the moment, thinking about this. But if you can you can get through that reliability, and you've got shielding and durability and weather resistance and all that at your hands, and that's all taken care of for you because you bought good cable, then that's going to make you have indirectly have a better uh, summer field day experience. And there's nothing worse than 1 o'clock comes around and or 2 a.m. comes around and, you're having issues, or it's 1 o'clock in the middle of the day and you're starting to try and start field day, you hear stations calling out there already, and you've got some type of coax issue of some element causing a problem. So, you know, that is not what I want you to have for an experience. Now, this may sound like a sales pitch to use ABR Industries, because I am going to push it just a little bit. Shannon, Chuck, all the guys down there at ABR Industries, met with them this weekend. And yep, I do have a hat from them. I buy every bit of my coax from 316 all the way to LMR 400, rotor cable included. I just ordered a 20-foot piece of rotor cable from them earlier this week, and it should be here. I was hoping by Saturday, but looks like it's going to be here probably by Tuesday. So I was hoping to get a little sooner so I can get my rotor up and running for my tower, but it is what it is. And, if I need it sooner, I probably should have, ordered it sooner. And I knew I was going to need it, right? So it wasn't like I, didn't have time to plan that in advance and have it before my rotor came, but so be it. It is what it is. And so, ABR Industries is one company that I have trusted for years. And I truly do. Every inch of coax in my shack, in my supply closet, minus 80 feet, is, and I say 80 feet because I know it's one strand I have from DX Engineering for coax cable. I think it's an LMR 400, I think is what it is. I have about 80 feet of it. So other than that, every inch of my rotor cables, in fact, I even have Ethernet cables from ABR Industries. And so, their coax assemblies are American built, professionally terminated, and designed for serious RF environments. And I really appreciate their attention to detail. I mean, they got the green coax connectors on them. They usually have my name or call sign on them. And when I go out to field day, I know that's the W0 MET cable. I don't have to say, oh, this is Bill's cable. Is this Larry's cable? It's like, oh, who borrowed me this cable? Has my call sign. I know whose it is. And, some of the features of their cable is, kind of what I talked about a minute ago, is the weatherproof adhesive, heat shrink terminations that they have on the end. And again, you can put your call sign stuff on there. UV resistant jackets suitable for outdoor use. They have direct burial capable options as well if you want. Professionally molded protective connector caps, easily to identify labeling with the cable type and length, which is really nice to have. It's like, hey, I've got a 2-foot piece of length here. I've got a 3-foot cable. I've got a 75-foot cable. That is huge for me to be able to look at a cable and go, oh, this is a 50-footer. Okay, cool. I don't have to look at it and, guess otherwise. And I just think they have really high quality connector options for UHF, BNC, SMA, etc. And, they've got the chokes and stuff that they do. And just all their cables are, some of it is like times microwave and stuff. I mean, they don't just throw a cheap cable in there. This is, very professional type of cable they're using. They're used in remote monitoring systems and, GPS infrastructures, RFIDs, SCADA infrastructure, military applications, government applications, emergency management, marine communications, and obviously we use it for amateur radio. I mean, they sell to government and everybody else as well. And I mean, this is high quality rated cable. And, those are just some of the industries that they use their cable in. And, I think that says a lot about the reliability of their products and the quality of their products that they have. And I think it's just that's what they, that's what they build. That's how they do it. So, go out and, save yourself 10%. Use code W0MET10. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Let me just double check that just to be safe. I hate to tell you it's the wrong one. Yeah, but I'm almost positive that's why it is. I have to go. Remember, some of these flight codes sometimes are. It's be right at the top of my list. I just got to pull it up real quick. I don't need to do an update. W0MET10. That's what your um, affiliate code is. When you go to the website and you want to make a purchase, that's what you're going to use as your code, the W0MET10. So, go out and save 10% with their with their cable if you need some, whatever you need for field day, get it ahead of time. It takes about a week for them to get it to you, and make sure you order it plenty ahead of time. And so, tell Chuck Marvin sent you, and I'm sure I'll take good care of you down there. If you have any problems, I mean, they will take care of it. I guarantee it. And like I said, if you don't really know what you need, but you're looking for some cable, you're not sure if I want LMR 240 or 213, you want LMR 400, call Chuck. He'll kind of ask you what your application for is you want to use it with, and he will definitely get you the right cable. Nose is starting to run a little bit. Allergies kicking in. Like I said, if you saw the video, you can see my eyes and like it's just allergies are terrible. So moving on to another segment here. Field day is hard on equipment. I mean, we're moving it. We're packing it up in boxes and hopefully, good like Apache cases or Pelican cases of some sort. The cable gets thrown in the back of the truck, onto the trailer, the back seat, on the floor. And, that's just, some of the equipment, your coax obviously could be, rain. It may get pushed in the mud if it's wet and rainy for field day. People walk over it, folding tables sit on it, just you name it. Someone unrolls it and starts to throw a kink into it to try to help you out. And so, field day it can be hard on equipment. So you want something that is good quality and that's going to work and hold up for you. And again, you may only use it once a year. But did you go home and wipe it out, or wipe it off? Did you get all the mud off of it? Did you, take the moisture, wipe off from there, for any overnight dew or moisture that would have happened? And, make sure you get it, squared back up and rolled up properly for the next year or, whenever your next outing or, event is going to be that you need to use it for. But, portable operating environments are rough. And I have a future podcast coming up talking about that, about portable ops. And I'm looking forward to that one. But, having good quality equipment and coax being one of them that's why it matters to have good quality coax because, you pay for what you get, right? I mean, that's what the old line goes. And so having a dependable feed line means one less failure point during your weekend where things are already, kind of hectic sometimes and chaotic and you have a lot going on. Maybe you're under a time frame, under a gun trying to get set up. So you definitely need to have quality, coax, I think. Because again, that's I think that's pretty important. And I think hopefully you're getting that from this message here. Now, one thing I think that's pretty cool, and I know DX does it as well. One feature I really think is really cool about this. You can have a custom jacket. They've got like red, white, and blue, and orange, and green, and purple, and pink, and you can have it made with your name or call sign directly printed on the coax, with some heat shrink. And when it really, matters, when you got feed lines running everywhere, your cable is instantly identifiable. If it's bright orange or pink or green, people can see that. It's very visible, hopefully not become a trip hazard. You probably need to be, tying some yellow flag tape around your, coax as well. Help identify so people, don't make it a trip hazard. You don't want to make it, a safety issue during field day if someone trips over it. And so, that makes it really helpful to have, that outer shield, or kind of that coating, or that sheath that goes over the top of it. It makes it a little bit more durable, stronger as well, to help hold up the outer coating. So, that's why that coax is important. I mean, it can get expensive if you're doing, more than probably 50 feet of it, but, you know, uh, definitely when it comes down to identification, it makes it really easy, and tearing down a lot more quicker, as it goes on. And I also think it looks really, really sharp. I have one piece of coax that I use that's orange for my portable operations, doing POTA, so people can identify it, so they can see it. But that is only time I really pull that out and use it. I don't use it around the house or anything like that, or outside my local area here. But when I'm doing POTA or something like that, I'll usually throw the cable out and use it. It's always attached to my POTA bag. So I do have it. It's held up well. I've really enjoyed having it, and it's been good to use. So a couple quick notes as we continue with time here, and we're getting into 40 minutes almost as well. Is before you spend time upgrading your radios or chasing another antenna project, inspect your coax. Check for any cracks in the jacket, any water intrusion, any corrosion, loose connectors, things like that. Any potential kinks in the wire that you might have found. They say sometimes there, some of the more ultra flexible cable can, certainly when you're trying to unloop it, from being new, it can get, a few kinks and stuff into it, and have a few issues along those ways. Check for SWR issues if you can, for anything that high SWRs you might be having, and just any excessive wear from repeated portable use, time and time after again. And so, if you think your questions coax is questionable, replace it before field day. Again, reach out to Chuck or Shannon down at ABR Industries, and they will be glad to help you out with that. Again, use code W0MET10, and get that purchase in advance. You don't want to be dealing with that during field day. That is not the time. That will ruin your momentum for any excitement that you're having around field day. And you want to do it while the band is open, and not having to be fighting and chasing that. So I really hope that this will be helpful for you during your field day operations. And there's so much again to talk about for coax, and I could probably do another hour of this. And I had to start to think about all the different ways people use coax, and I could go into the types of coax. And I kind of mentioned 316 and LMR 240 and LMR 400 and 8X and 213, and just depend kind of what your application is, but also you want to look at the attenuation sometimes, and how many how much loss over 100 foot it is, depending on the band you're on. You're going to want more like an LMR 400 for VHF, but I'll also use it for the long distance on the HF going down a hill 165 feet. So versus LMR 240 or 8X or something like that, something a little smaller. It was probably not something you're going to be wanting to operate 1500 watts on, going over a 200-foot span out to your tower. So it just, again, if you have any questions, they'll be glad to help you out with that and identify what cable you need exactly down there at ABR Industries. So, again, part 2 of this series, talking about field day. We're going to be talking about power systems for batteries, solar setups, generators, power distribution, any backup planning, things like that. Make sure you make any, check your generators out in advance, get them up and running. So you're not going to want to miss that episode. That will be coming up probably by next week. I should have having that one done. And I'm hoping to get that done before I take off. So that'll be my episode right before I take off. And then the other one, I'll probably get back right when I get back from the trip, right before field day, around the 19th or 20th. I'll get the third one out, unless I happen to have the time to get that recorded in advance. So that is all I have about coax today. I hope you found that this information was helpful and useful, and that you really learned something about coax, and trying to prep yourself for Field Day 2026, and why hopefully convince you why you need to make sure you have good coax and why it's important in your feed line. So, um, I hope that you'll definitely take some time to check that out. And I definitely will check mine on a regular basis. So I just went through all of that in the last week here, actually. So, well, before we check out, I just want to say a big thank you to all the Patreon supporters for making the Ham Radio Guy podcast possible. Your contributions help keep the content coming and the mics on. If you're looking for all things ham radio, visit our Patreon page over at patreon.com/the ham radio guy. You'll find exclusive content, product reviews, exciting blog posts, and much more. Stay in the loop by joining the conversation over your favorite podcast platform, and follow us on Twitter and also now Instagram. We've been out there for a little while. And so whether you're looking at the latest trends, tips, and hams radio, we try and keep you covered. And I just want to thank you for being a part of this community and helping us share the love of ham radio far and wide. Well, until next time, I say 73 and happy hamming, and keep those antennas high, the signal strong, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Ham Radio Guy. Take care.